right, NBA Twitter is a very, very interesting place because you could be scrolling around and out of nowhere you could be exposed to the most far left field theory, rumor, news piece, whatever. You could be exposed to pretty much anything. And this one seemed a bit crazy. Allegedly, the Houston Rockets are interested in pursuing Devin Booker. As I said, allegedly, I don't know the validity of this at all. Honestly, though, it's not as crazy as I'm making it out to be because Houston, I could see a world where they're interested in pursuing Devin Booker. That doesn't mean that the Suns are necessarily shopping Devin Booker at this point in time, right? And it wouldn't make sense for the Suns to shop Devin Booker because if you look at the trade rumors associated with Phoenix over these last few weeks, it's pointing towards them trying to win now and trying to contend. If you're thinking about moving away Devin Booker, that puts you closer to a rebuild than anything else, right? The Suns are trying to win now. They're trying to make a championship run. That's evident by the fact that they were interested also in pursuing Jimmy Butler. So just because Houston has interest doesn't mean that the Suns are shopping Devin Booker at this particular point in time. And I think that's the case, right? I don't think Phoenix right now is in a position where they're even hearing offers for Devin Booker, unless it is something absolutely ridiculous, like getting like a Victor Wembanyama or something like that, right? So I don't think Phoenix is thinking about moving away from Devin Booker, but I could see why Houston would have some interest in him. Do I think Houston could put together an enticing enough trade package to get a guy like Devin Booker and at least get Phoenix to open their ears up a bit? Not at all, unless Phoenix is trying to rebuild, right? Most of what Houston has right now are young assets, right? Where if you're a team that's open to rebuilding and going down that path, you would be interested in getting some of those pieces over from the Rockets. But that is not where Phoenix is at. I said that already. They are trying to win now and contend. Now, on the flip side, the idea of Devin Booker being in Houston is very, very interesting, right? But the answer to the question lies in this. If you're the Rockets, right, and this is beyond Devin Booker, right? This could be with other guys who are like all-star, borderline superstar level players. Would you rather wait it out and let this core and this group that you have right now develop? Or would you go all in so early in this process to try to bring back a star? Right? That was the most interesting part of the Devin Booker conversation. Sure, it may seem crazy to think that they would make a run at Devin Booker and the Suns would be interested, but it does raise a very interesting question about this Rockets team. Do you go all in now? Or do you wait it out, right? Do you need to make this move and give up pieces of your roster that's already working? Right now, they're like the second best team in the West. Would you need to give up on that in order to bring in a star player? Or do you wait it out, develop, and continue on this path? That has been working, right? That's the question. And in my opinion, I think you wait it out. Look at the Oklahoma City Thunder. They waited it out really for just a few years. I think the first time they showed us some promise as a real threat in the West was like the 2023 season where they made the play-in tournament. Then next season, they end up making the playoffs and lose in the second round. And now, obviously, they are the number one team out in the West. So there is value in holding on to your guns a bit and waiting before making that big splash and making that big move. And Houston, I think, would benefit largely from following that blueprint. That doesn't mean they can't make moves on the margins to help them get closer to contention. OKC had to do that, right? They just went out and signed Isaiah Hartenstein. They moved a few pieces away to get a guy like Alex Caruso. Those were more marginal pieces, right? These weren't massive splashes that they made to bring in another all-star level player around SGA. They still kept that core. They kept that identity as a generally young team relying on young stars, just added some really good, relatively smaller pieces to the roster. And I'm not saying Isaiah Hartenstein and Caruso are small pieces on this Thunder team because they're not. They're massive contributors, but relative to getting like a superstar level player and going all in on that, those are relatively smaller moves on the margins. I think Houston could end up seeing a lot of benefit from that. You have something right now that's working. You have an identity. These guys do have a chemistry with one another. I don't think you go all in on it now, right? To try to bring back a star and try to win immediately, especially if we're seeing that the blueprint is that waiting it out and developing tends to work. Look at the Boston Celtics, right? They essentially developed that core of Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. Again, they did make some moves here and there on the margins and did get some big time role players like Drew Holiday and Brian Kristaps Porzingis. Maybe that's a bit of a bad example. Let's go look at the 2023 Denver Nuggets, right? They waited it out, let that team develop. There were some small moves made on the margins, but that duo of Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic were well intact. They waited it out, they worked it, and now here they are as pretty much a championship contender once again, despite what you think about this Nuggets team right now. Houston could see a lot of benefit in doing that as well, especially in this current climate where making that immediate move to try to bring in as many star players as possible isn't bringing a ton of value to teams right now. Look at the Suns themselves, right? They're the epitome of that. I know the situation was a little bit different because they started making these super team moves after getting to their first finals appearance back in 2021, but still, like, rushing to bring in that superstar guy or that additional all-star guy to try to rush the process doesn't bring back the best returns. So Houston in this climate would see a lot of benefit out of holding on to their guns, letting this thing work out, maybe getting some solid signings here and there, some solid marginal pieces on the roster that could benefit them a ton. There is also a world, and I'm going to kind of be really hypothetical and explore the idea of Devin Booker being on this Rockets team. That's something that could work, right? Like, there is a world where that could be a situation where they're still successful and probably more successful than what they are right now, right? So if you bring in a guy like Devin Booker, you're probably giving up guys like Fred VanVleet, maybe Tari Eason is in that deal, some other guys here and there. But a duo on the perimeter of Devin Booker and Jalen Green, and then accompanying that with a great playmaker like Alperen Sengun, that's interesting because one thing about Devin Booker is he can specialize in certain things if you allow him to focus on certain things. So your question with bringing in an offensive-minded player like Booker is, does he move us away from our defensive identity? The answer to that is no. Devin Booker is a really good positional defender when he's allowed to focus on that. I'm thinking about Team USA and what he was doing defensively throughout the Olympics. Now, they were playing relatively lesser skilled guards throughout the Olympics. There are still guys like SGA sprinkled in there. I'm not totally downplaying the guard play on that Olympic stage, but regardless, Devin Booker was good defensively and is generally good defensively when he's allowed to focus in on that end. So Devin Booker isn't a guy who I think can come onto a team that has a defensive identity and make them give that up, right? He's a really good defensive player when motivated, when he's putting his mind to it. I think he'd be a good fit because, one, he can do those things defensively. He doesn't sacrifice their culture. And also offensively, he can pair and mesh well with a guy like Jalen Green. Green is primarily a score-first player. He is a volume scorer at times, but that's what he does. Booker can also be a score-first guy, but he is a very underrated playmaker, right? Is he the best? No. But there is a level to Devin Booker that he can kind of tap into where he is a really good complementary piece, kind of a Swiss Army knife guy who can play off of other guards well if he's asked to play and handle some point guard duties, right? So just kind of exploring the idea of Booker being on a Rockets roster the way this team is now with this core of Jalen Green and Sengun and those guys is something that could make sense, right? But still, regardless, I don't think that's something that's going to end up happening. Right now, those two franchises just don't really seem to be in a place where they need to make a move like this. Houston doesn't need to go all in and try to get a star now. And Phoenix definitely isn't looking into shopping Devin Booker since they are trying to contend and win now. Right. So those are my thoughts on that. I don't think there's a lot of validity to the idea of Phoenix wanting to move from Booker. I'm not saying that there's no truth to Houston having interest in Booker, but would that be the best move for both teams? No. It's only a good move if the Suns are open to the idea of going into rebuild position, but that's not the case right now, right? They feel like they are right on the brink of contention no matter what you think about this team. They feel like they can get there. Shopping Devin Booker doesn't really get you closer to that unless you are getting like a star level player and you're packaging him up with somebody else to get like a star level, borderline superstar level player, right? I don't think there's much out there that Phoenix can get that's going to make them that much better than what they are now. Right, unless you're thinking about bringing in another superstar level guy. So those are my thoughts. We'll see what ends up happening. I think Houston could end up making moves, but again, I don't think right now they need to make that massive splash to get closer to contention.